As a class is studying, a boy remarks that this class sucks and that he lives in an ordinary world and in an ordinary school. The teacher asks who wants to come up and prove this law, so the boy, John, raises his hand and asks if he can go to the bathroom. Annoyed, the teacher tells him to go ahead. A guy named Martin mockingly tells him to not die on his way there, but the teacher throws a chalk at him, causing his nose to bleed, and suggests that he might like to volunteer. As John is walking through the hallway, he mutters that his life is overall pretty ordinary in size because of how exhausting long blocks are. He suddenly hears some rumbling and a boy gets thrown on a classroom in front of him. Stunned, John realizes he could have died there and slowly asks the boy if he's alright, but he just angrily gets up and curses the person he's fighting, Ison. However, Ison annoyingly calls him an idiot since he lent his pen to him for one class and he went and broke it. The boy argues that he didn't have to hit him so hard since it really hurt a lot. He charges up a beam, seeing which John hurriedly tells himself to run and gets away, just as the guy fires the beam, as it's revealed that he wasn't born with an ability of his own because he's the loser protagonist. John sees a student being bullied and the bully orders the kid to do that thing again. However, the boy declines and tells him to leave him again, so he gets punched in the face. The bully angrily orders him to not talk back to him and to do what he says or he'll beat the crap out of him. He's about to punch the kid again, but John pushes him away and rolls up his sleeves. He tells the bully to keep his hands to himself, seeing which the bully smilingly mutters that he knows who this and recognizes him as John, the school cripple. He acknowledges that it's pretty ballsy that he's trying to play hero, but says he really should know his place as he rushes forward to punch him. However, John swiftly deflects his attack and punches him on the face. He warns the bully to back off, but he angrily declares that he'll pay for this. The bully activates his ability, seeing which John worryingly wonders what the hell he's supposed to do against that. The bully asks John if he hasn't learned that the world doesn't have sympathy for weaklings like him, so he should just lay low and mind his own business or keep getting in the way of others and get killed. John wonders if that was a threat before the bully suddenly appears behind him and stabs through his arm. John is shocked by how fast he is and remarks that his skin just now was rock solid. He sees that this allows the bully to get increased speed and durability and realizes he has a flashy power-up, but his ability is just a form of self-enhancement. The bully says that's only a taste of what he can do and says that if John begs him, he'll let him leave in one piece. John annoyingly remarks that his ability isn't even that good, he's just gloating because he found someone weaker than him. He slowly smiles and bursts out in laughter. Annoyed, the bully asks what the hell he's laughing at, so John says he's obviously laughing at him and declares that telling him to beg is a pretty big demand since usually, when someone talks like that, they can back it up. As the bully glares at him, John decides to give him some examples and explains that they have Remy, who can burn him to a crisp, like an Ison, who are currently blowing up Wallach Hall, and obviously, Serafina, who is pretty much a god. He tells the bully it's his turn now and asks what he can do: move a little faster, hit a little harder. He says that doesn't seem too threatening and bets that he can beat him despite not having an ability. The bully angrily tells him to shut the hell up and rushes towards him, but John quickly ducks and grabs him before smashing him through the window and throwing him out. Shocked, he realizes that actually worked but sees that his arm seems to be broken again. Meanwhile, a girl is sitting on the rooftop alone, using her phone. At the infirmary, the doctor sees that John is back again with a broken arm and angrily questions how many times he has to tell him to watch himself before asking if he really wants to die. John hurriedly asks him to calm down and apologizes. The doctor hands him a concoction and tells him to drink it so that his arm can heal in 3 hours. John thanks him as he takes a sip, so the doctor wearily mutters that he's going to lose his job because of him one day, and it's lucky that he ran into Stoneboy today, since even he wouldn't be able to do much to save John if he had pissed off any of the higher year students. John says he already knows that and gets up, telling him to not worry because he'll be more careful. The doctor asks where he thinks he's going and grabs him by the shoulder, declaring that it was a nice try, but he already knows the drill. He's not going anywhere until he's healed, so he'll notify John's teachers that he won't be attending classes for the remainder of the day. As the girl is sitting on the rooftop, she receives a message from someone begging her to save them, so she asks where they are and smiles. As the doctor is working, the girl enters, so he annoyingly sees that it's the other one. The girl, Sarah, shows John the phone and asks what all this is about. He says he's dying of boredom and the doc won't let him leave for another 3 hours because he'll get his butt kicked again. Sarah chuckles and says she's got to head back to class, but she'll remember to not wait for him when school ends. John stops her and asks who she's kidding when everyone knows she never goes to class. He asks her to help out a friend and keep him company, so she sighs. A while later, Sarah asks John why he has such a creepy look on his face, so he says he's glad she asked and shows her that he got the high score in Slappy Pig. He declares that it looks like there's a new champion in town, so she acknowledges that he's pretty good, but says he's still not good enough and shows him that her score is 212. Shocked, John says that doesn't count because she cheated, so she asks if he's saying that because of her ability and mutters that it's not her fault that he doesn't have one. They suddenly hear rumbling above them and John wonders what that was. The doctor angrily gets up and tells the person to just wait till he gets his hands on them. As his hand is on the doorknob, he suddenly turns around to glare at John and declares that he will stay here until he's back before questioning if that is clear to him. John tells him to not worry about him because he has Sarah to keep him company. The doctor slams the door and leaves, after which John turns to Sarah and says they should get out of here, so she smiles and agrees. As the bully gets up from the ground, he angrily declares that he will destroy that no-good cripple the next time he sees him. He suddenly spots John leaving the building and rushes towards him. He activates his ability and grabs John by the collar before declaring that he has a bone to pick with him. John asks if this is about earlier and says he thought they were over that already, so they should just forget about it and make up with each other. The bully reminds John that he threw him out of the window, so John reminds him that he broke his arm, which is why they can just call it even. The bully angrily tells him to shut his filthy mouth and punches, so John hurriedly shields himself, but the bully's punch stops just short of John's arm as he sees Sarah standing behind him. Sarah glares at him and tells him to stand down, but he nervously smiles and asks if he's supposed to be scared. He admits he's heard rumors about her, but questions how strong she can really be if she hangs around this weakling all day long. He suggests that she should leave, but she suddenly smashes him into the wall. As the bully is lying on the ground, he wearily questions what the hell that was about when she didn't even move. Sarah tells him to not waste her time, but he inwardly tells her to not speak down to him. He punches her and tells her to go to hell, but she swiftly dodges and knocks him unconscious. As John is silently watching, she asks where he wanted to go, so he suggests having a drink. She agrees but says he'll pay, so the doctor drags two kids back with him as they realize they're screwed. In the infirmary, he furiously asks how they dared to cause so much ruckus when classes are still going and declares that he's sending them both straight to Keen after this. Blake explains that he was just minding his own business, studying then he came over and punched him out of nowhere. Blake points out that that wouldn't have happened if he hadn't broken his pen, so Ison annoyingly says it was the most useless part of the pen, but Blake says he doesn't care and tells him to not break his stuff. The doctor orders them both to shut up and bashes their heads together, declaring that it doesn't matter who started the fight because he just wants them both to understand that their actions have consequences. The bully from before desperately crawls inside as the doctor sees that John ran away. At the boba shop, Sarah asks John if he really threw the bully out of a window of all the things he could have done, so he's about to say he didn't really have a choice, but she starts snickering, so he annoyingly says it's not funny, because he could have gotten killed. Sarah mutters that he always says that, yet here he is again, in one piece. John says she's missing the point, but she says it has to be at least a little exciting, living on the edge like that. John stays silent for a moment before saying it's nothing like that because he really just wants a moment of peace right now. Every little conflict always turns into a full-on brawl, and he can't do anything without fearing for his life. He asks why the world has to be so violent and if there's anything wrong with talking things over with another, so Sarah says that's because it's a waste of time. There's no need to argue with a weakling to prove a point. John asks if that's because she can just overpower them and reminds her that the stronger person isn't always right and declares that it's pathetic that people have to use force to back up their claim. Sarah asks what he's implying, so he says he wasn't targeting her specifically, just higher tiers in general, so Sarah decides to just ignore him. John remarks that Sarah was born strong, so she doesn't understand what people like him have to go through every day. On the TV near them, a reporter states that the villain, Ember, has been leaving a trail of bodies and investigators have discovered the body of the well-known vigilant, Ecstatic. The victim's body was covered in second-degree burns and multiple stab wounds, and like all other Ember victims, a very prominent brand of its logo marked the corpse. John hears someone exclaiming that Loven is the next town over, so Ember might be heading here. Sarah sees that yet another self-proclaimed superhero falls victim to the consequences of everyday society and says people need to learn to mind their own business, especially if they don't have the strength to back it up. John argues that he was trying to keep them safe, so she asks if he feels safer now that he's dead. In a flashback, the teacher tells everyone that she knows it's a bit late in the year, but they have a new student joining them today and asks the student to introduce themselves. John greets them and says he's looking forward to meeting them all and hopes they can get along. He had worked very hard to get into this school, many sleepless nights and countless hours of studying, so with such difficult entrance exams that he expected academics to be the main focus at Wellston, he expected things to be different. John gets ready for maths class before a girl greets him and introduces herself as Elaine. She asks how his first day has been going so far, so he admits it's not bad. She cheerily says she's glad to hear that and asks which school he transferred from. John reveals that he was actually homeschooled before this, so she says they've never had one of these before. John says he was feeling a bit lonely, so he decided to try something new. Elaine says he's come to the right place if that's the case. However, John was wrong because this place was just like the rest of the world. Elaine asks what kind of ability he is hearing, which all the students turn around to stare at him in silence. John slowly reveals that he doesn't have one. Elaine asks what he just said, so he repeats that he doesn't have an ability, but Elaine exclaims that she can't believe this. John asks if she's alright and reaches out a hand to comfort her, but she angrily pushes him away and tells him to not touch her. Standing over John, Elaine calls him gross and says she can't believe she just spent all that time talking to someone like him because he's more disgusting than the grimmest shake. The other students mutter that he's just another weakling and that the stupid new kid got their hopes up for nothing. In this world, strength defines a person and those without strength are crushed. Later, as his classmates corner him, John hurriedly says he's not looking for a fight, but they tell him to not worry because neither are they, they're just here to educate him. One of them says that in this school there's a hierarchy that everyone follows, and since he's a cripple, he's at the very bottom and must do everything they say. John sees Sarah near them and recognizes her as a classmate, so he hurriedly yells out to ask if she can help him out here. Annoyed, she turns away before the guy angrily tells John to pay attention when they speak to him. Later, as John is sleeping in his house, he receives a call from someone. Sarah says she needs to make a trip to the mall today and asks if he'll come with her. John apologizes and says he's a bit busy right now and his place is a mess too, so it'll take him all day to clean. Sarah says that if he just moved into the dorms like all the other guys, this wouldn't be a problem anymore. John says he'd have to worry about his life then, so she admits that's true and says that's too bad. John agrees and is about to say goodbye, but someone suddenly rings on his doorbell. Stunned, John questions if she's already outside. John opens the door and glares at Sarah, who tells him to not give her that look and says he should come with her since she'll help him clean. However, she smilingly sees that his house is spotless. She sees a pair of gloves on the ground and picks them up before saying they're done now, so they should get going now. John wearily agrees but asks her to keep it short this time. As Sarah is shopping at the mall, Sarah suggests a goofy-looking short and says he thinks the writing is pretty cool and might be some French. He wonders and heads to the fitting rooms to try it on. When he comes out, he asks if it looks good, so she inwardly admits it's not bad. Later, John wearily says he didn't expect that to go so smoothly, so she says the mall isn't half bad. John is about to say it's not that small, but he suddenly notices a stall with an ability gauge. He asks Sarah if she wants to give it a try, but she declines since she heard those things are always a scam. John says they can just check it out for fun. Sarah sighs and agrees, so they head over to the stall where a girl angrily asks the man how her getting a 4 is possible. The man says she should be proud of the score since it proves she's more talented than the average person. However, the girl questions why he's telling her it's good when he only gave her a 4. The man slowly explains that if they use the standard gauging system, a 3 is average and 5 is considered high tier, so she's very strong. However, the girl angrily says he's a fraud and insists that she wants her money back. The man tries to explain, but she grabs him by the collar and declares that if he doesn't refund her money right now, she will blow his entire booth to bits. John asks the girl, Levain, to calm down, but she annoyingly tells him to mind his own business. John says this is his business because he's not going to wait around for her to get her $10 refunds, so she should stop bullying the guy and give someone else a turn. Levany questions how he dared to speak to her that way and says kids like him should learn to keep their mouth shut as she activates her ability. John hurriedly tries to explain that he's not looking to start a fight. A man decides to go somewhere else since this isn't worth the wait, and Levany tells John he should have thought of that before insulting her. John remarks that she's just making up stuff now and apologizes, saying they should talk about this. Levany smilingly asks if he's scared already, so he inwardly admits he is and wonders what she's holding in her hand. He realizes it's condensed energy, so a shot of that could do some serious damage. Noticing a security guard, he smiles and tells her to go ahead since if she really wants to fight, he'll be happy to oblige. Levany wonders why John isn't powering up and sees that Sarah just keeps smiling herself. John asks what she's waiting for, so she orders him to not try to be arrogant with her and gets ready to attack, but John suddenly calls for help because this crazy woman's going to blow up the mall. Levany questions who he's calling crazy before a security guard grabs her hand and asks what's going on here. Levany hurriedly points to John, but he says they were just waiting in line, then she suddenly threatened to blow up this booth, which is why they spoke up. Levany says that's because the man scammed her out of her money, but the guard asks her to calm down because he'll take it from here. He angrily tells the man that he's getting tired of his charades and orders him to return the money he took from this lady now. The man tries to argue, but the guard tells him to not make him repeat himself and warns that if he causes trouble one more time, he'll make sure he never does business here again. He hands over Levany's money, so she thanks him or the help and leaves. The guard tells Sarah and John that they both better stay out of trouble, seeing which John remarks that it doesn't matter where the evidence points, the result is always the same. He apologizes and says they didn't mean to cause any trouble, but the man assures him that there's no need to worry about that and that he appreciates the gesture since not many people are willing to speak up nowadays. He assumes they are both here to have their abilities read, so John brings Sarah forward and says she is. In that case, the man says he'll give her a free shot since that's the least he can do. He takes Sarah's hand and smiles before revealing that her ability level is an 8. John sees that he can gauge abilities through touch before the man mutters that it's been a while since he met someone as strange as her, so she's very gifted. Sarah slowly thanks him, so he presents her prize, a cute little bear for a cute little lady. John remarks that it's worth as much as the fee before the man asks if he would like to try as well. As he reaches out his hand, John quickly whips his arm away. The man apologizes and admits he should have asked for his permission first, but John says it's no big deal since he wouldn't get anything from him anyway. Sarah puts her bear in the bag and they walk away, seeing which the man slowly smiles. As they leave the mall, John sees that it's already gotten dark outside, so Sarah remarks that that's because he woke up at 2 p.m. She sees that it's really crowded, so John suggests that they go to a different bus stop if that annoys her, since there's one nearby, across the park. As they're walking, John senses something behind him before Sarah starts chuckling. He asks what's up, so she says he built that up so much. She thought a war was going to go down, but he just ended up screaming for help, which was really anticlimactic. John says the man shouldn't have been forced to return the money since the lady was clearly in the wrong, but she ended up getting her way just because she was more powerful, which is really frustrating. Sarah elbows him and tells him to not be so negative. She says he should worry about himself more since at least he didn't get his arm broken again. He smiles and asks if she's thought of a name for this little guy yet. She thinks about it for a moment and asks if he has something in mind, so he suggests John. She mutters that that's real creative, so John's about to ask if she doesn't like it, but he suddenly looks behind them. Sarah asks what's wrong, so he quickly grabs her hand and starts running. As they're running, Sarah wonders what's going on and what they're running from before John takes her into an alley. He quickly takes the shirt out and throws it, but it gets stuck in midair as John realizes their enemy is invisible. Sarah suddenly stops time and kicks their enemy far away before John can finish his sentence. She says they should get out of here, and he quickly agrees. After getting away, Sarah and John finally arrive home and catch their breath. She asks what the hell that was, so he admits he has no idea, but some guy was probably trying to mud them. He says he's had enough excitement for today, but Sarah suddenly asks how he could tell they were being followed. John admits he's really not sure and suggests that it was just a feeling he got. He asks if she's hungry and offers to make some ramen, but she says it's getting late, so she's going to head back to the dorms. John asks if she's crazy and questions if she really wants to go back out after that when there might be even more of them. She says she can take care of herself, so he mutters that he knows that, but it's safer if she just stays here for now. He questions why risk it when she can just go back tomorrow and it's bright out. John goes to make some ramen, so Sarah sits down and notices a book named UnOrdinary lying on the desk. He comes out to ask how much of the packet she wants, but he realizes he forgot to put the book back away. Sarah says he always surprises her and asks how he managed to get his hands on a copy of this when this book was banned almost 2 years ago, right after it was published. John says his dad had a few extra leftovers, so he gave him one. Shocked, Sarah asks if his dad is the infamous WHO. John slowly affirms this, so she says she's always wanted to read this, but copies are impossible to find nowadays. She wonders how it sparked so much controversy and admits it's really hard to find info on this book. John remarks that he didn't know she cared so much, as Sarah says she's heard rumors that it's cursed and a lot of people become delusional after reading it. All these superheroes who think they're doing the rest of them a favor, like Ecstatic or whoever else, have all just been influenced. However, John says they're not delusional, and the reason why all these people are stepping forward is because they realize the message that this book delivers: their world is flawed. They should be using their powers to bring balance and peace instead of using it selfishly like they are now. Sarah says he's starting to sound like those vigilantes, so he says it's better if she just reads it herself. In that case, Sarah decides to borrow it. In a control room, someone reports that Target 93 has been idle for 6 hours and 42 minutes and asks if they should record the target's location, so their higher-up orders him to mark it. Later, as John is sleeping, he hears someone being attacked before a girl offers to help him. John suddenly gets up and turns to see Sarah sleeping beside him. He washes his face and tells himself to calm down because that was just a dream. He puts on his hoodie and heads out towards the convenience store where he gets himself a snack. As he's eating, he thinks about the girl he was dreaming about and puts the snack back into his shopping bag. Later, Sarah sees that John's up early, so he says he couldn't sleep. She asks if he had a bad dream, but he just says he got them breakfast, so they should eat since he's starving. However, Sarah notices that something seems off. As they're eating, she remarks that he's usually very talkative, but he hasn't said a word since he came back. She asks if everything's alright since he's been acting very weird today, but he says it's nothing. She's about to offer some help if something is bothering him, but he says he told her he's fine. Sarah suddenly gets up seeing which John apologizes Ad is about to say he didn't mean to snap. However, Sarah mutters that it seems like he needs some time alone. She picks up her shopping bag and leaves, saying she'll see him tomorrow even though he hurriedly tries to stop her. As she leaves, she sees that she has 37 unread messages. In Wellston dormitories, Elaine angrily asks Sarah why she wasn't answering any of her texts and questions where she was last night since she had her worried sick. Elaine tells Sarah she was worried sick for her and asks if she was hanging out with that loser cripple again. When Sarah doesn't answer, she angrily declares that she doesn't get why she's always with him and warns her that she's making herself look bad. She says he doesn't even have an ability, but Sarah suddenly paralyzes her with her ability and declares that she's told her that what she does is none of her business. Elaine plops down as Sarah walks by and shuts the door behind her. Elaine sighs and suddenly receives a call from someone saying they're about to head out and asking if Seraphina is back yet. Elaine affirms that she just got back, so the person says they're on their way. Sarah sets down her teddy bear in her room and starts taking out her stuff from her shopping bags. She receives a call from John apologizing for earlier and asking her to be a bit careful with the books, since if someone sees it, she might get in trouble. Sarah takes out the book and opens it to see that the author has dedicated it to his son. Someone knocks on her, so she opens it to see Arlo, who exclaims that she looks beautiful today. However, she instantly starts closing the door. He asks her to wait and to at least hear him out. She tells him to go on, so he explains that they were challenged to a turf war and it starts 6 hours from now on, but they're down a member, so they need her to sub in for Queen. Sarah stays silent for a moment and says she's not interested in turf wars before bidding him goodbye. Arlo says he knows it's boring for her, but as Wellston's true queen, this is her responsibility. He says he's been running the show for her until now, but today he needs a queen. Sarah asks where Remy is and questions why she isn't going, so Arlo says she had to go home for a week due to a family emergency. Sarah doesn't say anything, so he tells her to not worry because she won't need to fight those weaklings since he and the Jack will take care of everything while she just sits back and watches the show. 6 hours later, Sarah is on the train with Elaine, Arlo, and the Jack. As the group is standing in front of the Agwin school, a guy sees that Wellston finally showed up. Arlo tells Broven it's been a while and questions how he's been, but Broven tells him to cut the crap because he's the one who challenged them and should at least have the decency to show up on time. Arlo walks forward, so Broven asks what he's planning when Wellston has no need to instigate a turf war. Arlo says he heard they just recruited a new queen and word is they haven't lost with her on their roster yet, so he wanted the chance to see her in action. Broven inwardly tells him to be careful what he wishes for and asks if he wants to settle this, 1-on-1 or 3-on-3. Arlo says 1-on-1 before Broven sees that it looks like he's switched up his team as well and asks who the new girl is. Arlo asks if it means Seraphina and says she's actually a returning veteran. Broven wonders where he's heard Seraphina's name before and shockingly realizes that she's the same one who took down their entire roster. Arlo says they should get started now. It's announced that the turf war between Wellston and Agwin will now begin and the Jacks are told to take their positions. Whichever team knocks out the opponent's lineup will be victorious. As the Jacks start fighting, the Wellston guy remarks that he's fast and might be a melee fighter. He quickly decides to not let him get close and throws projectiles at him, but the guy swiftly dodges them and jumps up before slamming down in front of the Wellston guy. He sees that the Wellston guy used his energy beam to dodge it before suddenly getting blasted by a team. He barely manages to dodge, but his leg still starts bleeding because of the damage. The Wellston guy inwardly tells him to stop moving around because of how annoying he is. The Agwin Jack inwardly questions how he's supposed to get to him. He throws rocks at the Wellston Jack, but he swiftly destroys them and instantly appears in front of the Agwin Jack before powering up a beam. He inwardly tells him to dodge this as the man remarks that there's no way he can avoid that, especially with his leg like this. Broven tells them to stop because the round's victor is clear and it's their loss. The Jack tries to explain himself, but Broven says it's fine and tells him to come and get his leg healed. The Queen steps forward and says she will take it from here. It's announced that the victor of the previous round was Jack from Wellston and Agwin's Queen has agreed to be the next challenger. They start fighting, so the Jack swiftly fires his projectiles at her, but as the smoke clears, he's shocked to see that 2 pincers coming from her back blocked everything for her. Shocked, he questions what the hell that is. The Queen suddenly starts attacking him with her pincers, so he swiftly continues dodging, remarking that he can't do anything with her constantly throwing those things at him. She suddenly slashes through his chest with her pincers. The Jack sees that she's gone and spawned 2 more pincers. As she continues relentlessly attacking, he swiftly dodges through the pincers and remarks that he can now get a clean shot on her. As he gets ready to attack her with his beam, she suddenly stabs him with her pincers and throws him away. Sarah wonders why Arlo isn't doing anything even though the Jack Blue can't win against her. Blake wearily questions how many of these things she has, so she asks if he still wants to act tough and questions why his team hasn't called him back yet. She asks if they're really going to leave him out till he gets killed, but he tells her to shut up because what they decide is none of her business. The girl agrees and decides to end this quickly. She activates all her pincers and they rush towards Blake, but Sarah suddenly says this is enough. She says there's no point in continuing this match because the win is hers. She tells Elaine to take care of Blake, so Elaine quickly agrees and helps him up. Sarah remarks that she left Turf Wars for 1 semester, and this is what Arlo made of it. Sarah gets ready to step forward and gets ready to fight, but Arlo stops her and says he already told her that he and Blake are going to take care of this, while she sits back and watches. Broven high-fives the queen, saying that was a nice one, and warns her to not let her guard down since there's a reason Wellston is ranked first in Turf Wars. He reveals that they've never lost a fight before, so she tells him to not worry since she's not going to play around anymore. It's announced that both teams are down 1 member each, and the next match will be between Wellston's king and Agwin's queen. As Arlo faces off against the girl, she instantly attacks him with her pincers, but he shields himself with a force field. Seeing this, the girl jumps up since there must be a weak point somewhere. However, Arlo blocks every attack from above as well and lands a few slashes on the girl despite not doing anything. Arlo smiles and slowly walks towards her, so she hurriedly tells him to not come any closer. However, Arlo keeps walking towards her. The girl realizes her attacks aren't connecting as Arlo smilingly traps her inside a force field. As the girl's pincers touch the force field, she keeps getting attacked. She questions how this is possible before Arlo walks into the force field. She furiously tells him to stay back, but none of her pincers aren't able to touch Arlo, who questions if she wasn't supposed to be undefeatable. She remarks that he can block all of her attacks and her attacks get reflected. She's trapped now, so she inwardly questions how she's supposed to beat something so stupid. Arlo smilingly says she's a disappointment since he had heard so many good things, but she's really nothing out of the ordinary. The girl angrily tells him to shut up and slaps him, but he grabs her hand and starts chalking her. Shocked, Rovan hurriedly tells Arlo to stop the fight, admitting that they've lost this one. Arlo tells the girl that she can't touch him with weak hits like those. Arlo doesn't stop choking her, so Rovan hurriedly questions what he's playing at. He says they've already called her out and tells him to let go, but he still doesn't stop. The Jack, who declares that that's it and he's breaking her out of there, but Broven tells him he's not strong enough. Arlo attacks Goo with his force field and Goo gets knocked to the ground. As the other rush to his aid, Sarah tells Arlo that that's enough. Arlo wonders if Sarah thinks that after being absent all this time, she can just stroll back in and give him orders. He smiles and inwardly tells her to think again as he continues choking the queen. Seeing this, Sarah charges forward and punches Arlo's force field. The attack gets reflected back to her, but she uses rewind and makes it damage him. Arlo pushes the girl, reeing away, after which she collapses. Arlo furiously asks Sarah what the hell she thinks she's doing and asks if she would attack her own teammate. Broven says that looks embarrassing since he's never seen a team fight itself before. Sarah turns away from Arlo and walks towards Reen and Broven, declaring that this turf war is still ongoing, but they have 2 options: either forfeit and accept their loss or continue to fight with her as their next opponent. She asks which option they will choose, so Broven agrees that they've won. As they're heading back, Elaine heals Arlo, who angrily glares at Sarah. He asks what the hell happened to her and why she acted like that, so Elaine says she doesn't know since nothing she says gets through to her anymore. Arlo questions what the point is of having her as her roommate if that's the case and reminds her that she's supposed to keep her in check. Elaine looks down and says it's all because of him. Sarah used to be focused on being the best of the best. She was always perfect at everything she did, and everyone idolized her. But ever since she started hanging around that loser John, she's become a completely different person, and it's like nothing matters to her anymore. Arlo doesn't know who John is, and Elaine remembers that he's not in their grave, so she mutters that she honestly doesn't know what Sarah sees in John since just mentioning his name makes her mad, but he's this guy in their class who's a total weakling and doesn't even have an ability, but somehow he's gotten closer with Sarah lately and she slept over at his place. Surprised, Arlo tells Elaine he wants her to keep a close eye on Sarah from now on and to let him know if she does anything suspicious while he deals with this John guy. John sees news that late night at 8:23 p.m., authorities discovered a body marked by the infamous Embers logo. The body was found in an alley in the South Wisconsin area, and the victim was identified to be a powerful and popular vigilant, but personal information about him has not yet been disclosed, but this victim's body was also covered in burns. John sees that the attacks are getting closer, and the reporter states that all the attacks are targeted at superheroes. A reporter asks a man what his thoughts are on the vigilantes that are being attacked recently, so he annoyingly says he couldn't care less about those lunatics since they're a bunch of kids who are just looking for trouble, and it's clear Ember is targeting vigilants, yet they're still continuing on with this nonsense, so it looks like they want to get themselves killed. Another woman says she finds it pretty terrifying to hear about all these powerful people dying all the time, and a lot has been happening lately, and there are a lot of things she'd rather not talk about. At school, Blake gets scared by Ison and angrily asks what the hell is wrong with him, so Ison tells him to relax and asks if he got beaten up by the Turk Wars again, since he looks terrible, so Blake annoyingly tells him to shut up and says he's at least strong enough to make it to the roster. Ison declares that he could totally make it to Turf Wars if he wanted to, but he's just not into that kind of stuff. Blake says he believes him and reveals that Sarah went yesterday. Stunned, Ison asks if he got to see her in action, so he confirms that he did. Ison says he's really lucky since she must have wiped the other team out, so Blake is about to reveal that she actually attacked Arlo, but he suddenly catches himself and says he just remembered he's not supposed to talk about it. Ison asks if he's just going to leave him hanging like that and says he knows he can't keep a secret, so he should just spit it out since he'll feel better after that. Blake agrees and asks him to promise he won't tell anyone, so Ison agrees. Meanwhile, John remarks that he got so carried away with the weekend that he completely forgot he has a huge history test today. As he's reading the test, he accidentally bumps into Arlo. Arlo's friend angrily asks John what he thinks he's doing. John mutters that he's cramming for the test, so the man questions if that's all he has to say after bumping into the king. John mutters that he said sorry and asks what else he wants him to do. He asks if he can go now since he has a test in 10 minutes, hearing which the guy reacts angrily. However, Arlo asks if this is really necessary and tells him to calm down and just let him already since he's making a big fuss over nothing. The guy tries to argue, but Arlo asks John if he has a test coming up soon and wishes him luck. John smilingly thanks him and continues walking. When John's gone, the guy asks Arlo why he didn't take John down when he's the guy he was looking for. He offers to go after him right now and drag him back here if he wants, but Arlo asks if he noticed anything off about John. The guy annoyingly says his hair was greasy, but he notices Arlo's stare and apologizes since he really doesn't know what he's talking about. Arlo asks him how he would react if he had no ability and just bumped into the king. The guy mutters that if he was a weakling, he thinks he'd be careful to not bump into anyone because he'd be scared of getting beat up. Arlo remarks that that's what he thought, but not only did John walk straight into him, when he turned to apologize, he didn't see the slightest hint of fear in his eyes, so he must be interesting. As Sarah is using her phone on the rooftop, she remarks that as long as she can remember, she had to be perfect. She was told she was not like the others, she was gifted and she will rise above her peers. She always told herself she must be stronger than everyone, she must be smarter than everyone, and she must be perfect. But when you're consistently perfect, it's no longer an experiment, perfect becomes an expectation and others start watching and judging. Before she knew it, she had gotten so lost in people's expectations that she stopped living for herself, but she also came to accept that this was exactly how everything was supposed to be, just like how the strong will always stand at the top and the weak will forever stay at the bottom. Her role was to be at the peak and be perfect. Then this kid showed up and asked her to help him. When the bullies got ready to beat him up, Sarah remarked that 2 guys against a cripple is a little overkill. John deflected one's attack and kicked him in the stomach before turning to face the other guy. He charges forward, throws his jacket on him and starts choking him. He orders his friend to stop the fight, but his friend rushes towards him, so John throws him in front of the guy charging forward and says he can have him back. Sarah wonders what the heck she's even watching right now before John rushes past her and says thanks for nothing. As the bullies chased after John, Sarah inwardly questioned what that guy thought he was. As Sarah was thinking about what John said to her when he ran by her, the teacher asked her to come up and get her test. The teacher sees that she's gotten another perfect score as expected and tells the rest of the class that they should follow Sarah's example, so they argue that that's not fair since she's a different level from them and everything is too easy for her. Sarah remarks that good grades and strength don't just come from nowhere. She worked hard to get where she is. She hears 2 girls gossiping that they won Turf Wars again, but that isn't much of a surprise since they have Sarah on their team and better be winning all of them, otherwise they'd be really disappointed in her. She's the smartest and the strongest, she does everything expected from her, but what does she get in return? John hears a boy telling someone that they're serving the triple choco cake today during lunch. Surprised, the guy's friend asks where he gets all this information from, so he tells him to not worry about it and to just make sure he gets to the cafe early today, which surprises John. John is relieved that he was actually able to get his hands on a chocolate cake and inwardly exclaims that he can't wait to taste it, but Sarah says she wants that cake he has and orders him to give it to her. John flatly declines and says he doesn't care if she's a queen or an ace, this cake belongs to him, so she should just back off and go get her own. Sarah orders him to not make her repeat herself. Intimidated by her aura, John slowly hands it over, but he lets it go just as she's about to grab it. The students wonder what's happening over there and exclaim that a standoff is taking place between Sarah and the cripple. Hearing the people say John outsmarted Sarah, she smashes him into the wall, inwardly declaring that he's nothing, he's far below her, and doesn't get to stand up to her. She questions if he thinks he's tough because of what he just did and asks how he dared to do that when she works so hard every single day, but he thinks he can just waltz in and humiliate her like this. She asks who the hell he is and declares that he doesn't even know what's going on as she slaps him. As she continues beating him up, she says he's weak and ignorant and doesn't even know what's going on, yet he walks around like he owns the place, like he can do whatever. She made it. She's at the top, so why does she still follow the rules? Why does she have to impress everyone? She slowly starts crying and questions why she doesn't get to do what she wants. Bro really got destroyed because of a chocolate cake. Presently, Sarah receives a message from John saying he definitely failed the history test and asking if she wants to get some lunch. As she goes down the stairs, she hears students gossiping about the fact that Sarah beat up Arlo at Turf Wars, even though she can't actually do that. They add that she's been breaking a lot of rules lately and wonder what's wrong with her since she doesn't go to class anymore and even chopped off her hair. The girls suddenly notice her coming and hurriedly stop, but Sarah just smiles and continues walking. At home, John receives a call from his dad who asks if everything's going all right over there. He says it's the same as usual and asks if something's happened, so he hurriedly says he's sure John has already heard, but there's some elite gang called Ember causing trouble around his area, so he should make sure to keep his eyes open and stay safe. John says he knows and doesn't mean to tell him, but his dad says he means it and he shouldn't do anything stupid. He suddenly receives a call from his editor and tells him to take care of himself, so John agrees and tells him to make sure he eats well. In Walston dormitories, Sarah is reading UnOrdinary, but she suddenly closes it and throws it beside her, remarking that she needs some fresh air. When she walks out of her room, Elaine says her parents sent some oranges from home and they make for great orange juice, so she should try some, so Sarah agrees to have some later. Outside, Sarah remarks that a story about one man who defends a world of cripples is strange and wonders where this premise even came from. She inwardly says it's possible that John's father wrote this book in order to introduce the idea of a more just society, one with a lot less violence and a lot less danger, so that Josh can stand as everyone's equal. Somehow, many people seem to actually agree with this idea, and they've even taken matters into their own hands, declaring themselves superheroes and helping others, just like how the protagonist of UnOrdinary protected cripples. She inwardly says it's no wonder that authorities banned this book because it challenges the entire structure of their current society, and the fact that even some high tiers had acted on it must have been pretty frightening for both of them. Despite everything, there is one glaring similarity between the UnOrdinary world and theirs. Only the powerful are able to influence the outcome of something. They decide whether to use their abilities for others or to keep it for themselves. Elaine enters Sarah's room and puts a glass of orange juice on her desk as well as a cute note, but as she's leaving, she suddenly notices the UnOrdinary book lying on her bed. When Sarah enters her room, he sees a glass of orange juice on her desk and notices that she accidentally left the book on her bed. Meanwhile, Elaine searches the book up on her laptop, and after reading up on everything, she hurriedly closes it and questions what she should do if Sarah becomes vigilant. She hurriedly shakes her hand and picks up her phone. Arlo picks up Elaine's call and she says she thinks Sarah is in trouble since she found a book called UnOrdinary in her room. She doesn't know if he's heard of it, but she did some research and it looks like bad news, so she really doesn't know what to do as she's worried about her. Arlo tells her to calm down and says all she needs to do is stay put for now. He asks if anyone else knows. When she says no one does, he smilingly tells her to keep it that way. John wearily sits down beside Sarah, who asks what happened to him. He mutters that he just found out report cards come out this Friday, so even the thought of it makes him anxious. Sarah says there really is no point in freaking out since there's nothing he can do about it now. John wearily sighs before Sarah reveals that she doesn't think she can return that book to him. He stays silent for a moment and guesses that Elaine found it. She tries to explain herself, but he annoyingly says she's always careless even though he warned her. He reminds her that she might have godly abilities, but she can't rewind all her mistakes, so she says she gets it and admits she messed up. He asks what she plans on doing now, so she says she's going to keep the book and make sure they can't trace it back to her. He thanks her for that, but asks what she's going to do, so she just shrugs. She mutters that there's no way she'd get past the lie detector, so she's going to get in trouble either way, and tells him to not worry because they'll be lenient with her. After all, she's Wilson's ace. John asks Sarah what she thought of the book, so she admits she honestly thought it was a bit absurd. John starts leaving, but she stops him and says she figured she wasn't getting the full picture, so maybe he can help her clear some things up. John sits up and explains that he really admired the hero of UnOrdinary. He He was the most powerful, yet he still listened to others, and through that, he realized that everyone has something valuable to offer, so he thinks the takeaway here is that even the weakest people can have some of the greatest ideas. They shouldn't be repressed if they are now, instead they should be protected. He mutters that he really appreciates all the people out there who are working to make this a reality, so if he were qualified, he'd join them 100%. Sarah apologizes since she knows that book meant a lot to him, but he says it's okay since he's read it plenty of times already, so it's about time he took a break from it. As Blake is reading, Remy drops a ton of books beside him and annoyingly says she doesn't get why teachers always like to give tests out at the end of the quarter, and now she has a million exams to make up. Blake asks when she got back, so she says that was late last night. She tells him to fill her in on what she missed last week, so he says it wasn't much. They won turf wars against Agwin on Sunday, and Sarah substituted for her as queen. He adds that this is a secret only royals can know about and reveals that Sarah kicked Arlo's butt at turf wars. Ruby says she obviously knew that already since everyone's been whispering about it since the morning. Shocked, Blake asks how they found out, so Remy says it's about time those two fought it out since they've always had beef with each other. She dismissively says whatever they do is none of her business, so Blake points out that she's queen, and it's kind of a responsibility to break them up. Ruby says they both know that the only reason she has that tile is because Sarah doesn't want it. She and Arlo are on a completely different level from them, so she's not getting involved in her problems anymore. She asks what will happen to her if she gets caught in the crossfire and says she might even get killed. Blake asks why she went home and if everything's alright since she left so suddenly. Caught off guard, Remy doesn't answer for a moment and reveals that she went home to attend a funeral because her brother was murdered. The teacher announces that he's going to hand out their report cards now as John remembers being beat up by a bunch of bullies and annoyingly calls them a bunch of lowlives before a girl offers to help him. John angrily snaps his pencil, so the teacher calls his name and orders him to take his report card before he starts reading his grades out loud. John sees his results and remarks that they could be worse. Meanwhile, Arlo inwardly says Sarah always gets what she wants, so it's no surprise she managed to find a copy of that book, but he wonders if UnOrdinary is the reason why she would rather associate herself with a cripple instead of hanging around other high tiers. He inwardly questions if she could be acting impulsively because of the book's influence. He accidentally runs into John and remarks that of course he had to bump into him. He sees that it's John again and asks if he's heard of a binder, as John embarrassingly sees that he dropped his papers in front of everyone. He says he just got his grades back and was reading the teacher's comments. Arlo kneels down to help John pick him up and notices the students around them gossiping about him. He asks if they don't all have better things to do and hands over John's papers. John thanks him, but he tells him to not mention it and to watch where he's walking next time and smiles as he leaves. Eisen nervously asks Arlo why he called for him, so Arlo explains that he needs his expertise and asks if he can find any sort of information on anyone. Eisen says that's kind of an overstatement, but asks what kind of info he's looking for specifically. Arlo asks if he knows of a guy in his grade. John, so Eisen asks if he's talking about the cripple who always hangs around Sarah and asks why he's interested in him since he's pretty infamous. Arlo mutters that he had a few encounters with him and he seems suspicious. He's powerless and completely unaware of his surroundings, gets mediocre grades, and has no respect for the social hierarchy, so someone as useless as him should have been put in his place ages ago. Arlo says despite that, he was somehow able to get into one of the top schools and can casually get along with Sarah. The facts don't line up, so he wants Eisen to look into it and find out what he's hiding, what his history is, how he got accepted into Wellston, everything. Eisen asks if all that is really necessary and tells Arlo he must be overthinking it since he probably just got lucky, so he doesn't need to waste his time on him. However, Arlo tells Eisen he doesn't remember asking for his opinion. Surprised, Eisen nervously agrees and tells Arlo to just leave it to him. Arlo adds that he should keep his mouth shut this time. In the hallway, John sees a paper asking people to place bets on which superhero will die next and takes it off, questioning who the hell would do something like this. He inwardly says playing the people's lives is disgusting and crushes the paper in his hands. He suddenly hears someone being bullied and sees a guy stomping on someone's papers, declaring that this will teach him how to walk. The kid hurriedly says he stayed up all night to finish this project, so the bully mutters that that's just too bad before John rushes forward and punches him in the face. The kid hurriedly picks up his papers and runs away as John asks the bully if he thinks this is funny. He says there are people dying out there, trying to save him, and the only thing he can do is take satisfaction in stepping on people weaker than him. He says that's pathetic and tells the bully this is a disgrace to society. The bully mutters that it's not like he's one to talk and calls him a stupid cripple before declaring that he's going to blow his face off. However, John swipes his hand away and elbows him in the face, ordering him to shut the hell up. As the bully reacts with shock, John declares that he wasn't done talking yet and gets ready to punch him in the face. However, he suddenly remembers how he was bullied as a child and slowly stops. As he walks off, the bully says he better run away and tells him to not mess with him again as Isen watches from afar. Remy sees the paper John ripped off and starts crying before slowly starting to burn it with her ability. Remy knocks on Elaine's door, so Elaine asks what brings her here. She says she wants to speak with Sarah and asks if she's here. Elaine says she's in her room and offers to make some tea for them both. Remy says there's no need for that since she'll be quick, so Elaine asks if she's sure. Sarah hears Remy knocking on the door and tells her to come in. Remy notices that there's something inside the teddy bear sitting on the table and quickly apologizes to Sarah for her absence. She says she knows how much Sarah hates turf wars and working with Arlo, but she really appreciates her subbing in for her. However, Sarah says she doesn't need to thank her since she owed it to her. All this time, she's taken the queen's burden off her shoulders, so it's the least she could do. Remy doesn't seem to be listening to her, so Sarah asks what's wrong since she keeps looking at her bear. Remy mutters that there's a weird circuit inside and it's throwing her off a bit. Sarah is surprised, so Remy asks if she minds if she opens the bear up and takes a look. Sarah tells her to go on, so Remy takes out some kind of transmitter and says it looks like someone's been tracking her. Sarah inwardly questions if a man at the mall planted a tracker in all the prizes and wonders what his purpose is. She suddenly realizes he's targeting high tiers since the banner at the stall said people that are +5 will get prizes. Remy tells Sarah she should stay alert from now in any case since they may be strong, but they're far from invincible. At school, Isen is confused by all of the information he's gathered so far. He remembers a guy telling him that John bluffed him and threw him out a window, then he got Sarah to kick his butt since he doesn't even fight his own battles. Another guy says they fought him a long time ago and can't really remember before insisting that he definitely ended up running and was too scared to face them. The defendant lie while the doctor furiously questioned who the hell John was. Isen remarks that it was nothing out of the ordinary and John reacts exactly how you'd expect a cripple to. He annoyingly remarks that Arlo is just salty because Sarah won't talk to him since he's making him look for something that doesn't even exist. However, if he doesn't report to him soon, he'll have his head. He suddenly realizes what the others said about John bluffing his way out, not fighting his own battles, and running away scared. He remarks that that's not what he saw. John had full confidence in what he was doing. Later in the hallway, Isen calls John and says the school newspaper wants to write an article about the life of a low tier and he wants it to be as accurate as possible, so he needs to ask him a few questions. John cheerily says he'd be happy to help, but asks if it can't wait till later since his class is about to start. Isen cheerily says that's a good one and says it can't wait. Isen tells John he's glad he could make it and asks him to have a seat. John says he didn't get much of a choice since he practically dragged him here, so Isen says he knows that and tells him to sit down. Before they start, he says he wants him to know that he's writing this article to shed light on low tiers, so he shouldn't hold back at all and should just speak his mind because his full honesty is encouraged. John asks if he can really do that, and says that's very generous of him as Isen remarks that now he's going to find out what he's hiding. Isen asks John where he's from. John says New Boston, surprising Isen who says that's pretty damn far from here. He asks if that's where he went before coming to Wellston, but John explains that he's been homeschooled his entire life, and this is the first real school he's attended. Isen remembers that that's the first thing John said when he transferred here and asks what made him decide to switch, so John says he's always wanted to see what a real school was like. It's just that his dad was a bit protective of him, so he didn't get the chance to till recently. Isen asks how his experience has been so far, so John admits it's pretty awful. Isen asks if he can elaborate on that, so John explains that they low tiers don't have any rights. They're not able to defend themselves. Everywhere is a danger zone for them, so they have to stay alert at all times. Life is scary for them. They can't do what they want or say what they think, and one simple run-in could put them out for days or even a week. Isen says that sounds rough, so John admits it is and remarks that he's taking a lot of notes. Isen asks what he did to survive this kind of lifestyle, so John is about to explain, but Isen corrects that he meant him specifically. John slowly mutters that he walks along the edge of the halls and tries to stay quiet since he doesn't want to draw any attention to himself. Overall, he tries to keep low and not get involved with anything. Isen senses that he's lying as John mutters that if he could suggest one thing to include in this article, he'd say they should all accept each other's differences, because no one deserves to be treated so badly. Isen asks him to hold on and says they shouldn't get ahead of themselves because he still has a handful of questions to ask. He asks why John decided to pick Wellston as his choice, so John says he wanted to go to a top school and Wellston's got one of the best academic programs in the nation. Wellston declares that that's ambitious as John wonders why he suddenly became so aggressive. Eisen points out that John must have also known that Wellston is also considered one of the most powerful schools in terms of ability level, and it's risky for a cripple like him to come here, yet he still did. Surprised, John mutters that he assumed academics would take precedent over fighting, but Eisen says that's pretty short-sighted of him, but he guesses it makes sense, seeing as he hasn't been exposed to this sort of thing before. He asked about his father since he said he was very protective of him and believes he must have his say in all this too, so he asks if he didn't warn him about what would happen. John wonders where he's going with this as Eisen asks how he persuaded him to let him move so far away from his hometown and throw himself into this kind of dangerous environment. He says if it was him, he'd have enrolled him into a school closer to home for a trial run first. Eisen mutters that that might be what he did, and for some reason, things didn't work out there. As he's about to continue, John suddenly grabs him by the scruff and asks what he's trying to do here. He reminds him that he came here to talk about the struggles of a low tier, not to have him meddle with his life. Eisen tells John he's really lucky Sarah has his back and tells him to get his hands off of him before picking up his notepad and thanking him for the info before suggesting that he should probably get back to class. Eisen checks the new Boston high school yearbook and spots a young John, so he declares that he's finally found him. Blake reacts with surprise and hurriedly asks if he can shut up since he's going to get them kicked out of the library again. Eisen dismisses that and tells him to take a look at this. Blake doesn't spot John at first and asks if he's stalking girls from other schools again when they have an essay due tomorrow. Eisen annoyingly asks if he's blind and says he's pointing at the guy before revealing that that's John from 2 years ago. Blake wonders why he's supposed to care and asks Eisen why he's looking it up, so Eisen says that's none of his business. Blake asks what the hell his problem is when he called him first, so Eisen asks if he doesn't have an essay to write. Blake annoyingly returns to his work and calls him a weirdo before the librarian comes over to them. Later, Arlo says it's been quite some time, so he better have something good on him. Eisen says he has his info right here and explains that he spent the last few days telling John to observe his behavior, then he closed things off with a quick interview, and the only information he seemed willing to give about himself were that he was homeschooled and he's got no ability. Even when they spoke about low tiers, he was reluctant to talk about himself, and on top of that, his answers were hypocritical. None of his previous actions matched what he said. At first, he thought John was just an idiot and he acts this way because he doesn't know any better, but then he began questioning him about his past and he suddenly got super defensive. In fact, he pulled a complete 180 and even attacked him. So he looked into his hometown and he found a class photo of John from his previous school. He went there for about 2 years before traveling to Wellston. Arlo sees that John looks almost unrecognizable, so Eisen reminds him of everything John's done so far and believes he actually has some sort of ability. He suggests that he can dig into him some more, but Arlo rips the papers into two and says he'll take it from here. In the Wellston dormitories, Elaine receives a message from Arlo. Arlo tells Elaine she should inform the headmaster of what she found the other day, so she slowly drops her phone. Later, a voice asks Sarah to report to the headmaster's office, so she walks past Elaine and angrily glares at her before going inside. The headmaster asks her to sit but tells her to not act so tense with him since she's even making him nervous. He introduces Miss Nadia, who is here on behalf of the authorities today, and is going to ask her a set of simple questions. He tells her to not worry since she'll be out of here in no time and tells her to begin. Nadia warns Sarah that any false response she gives will be detected and will result in immediate expulsion from Wellston Private High School. Sarah affirms that she understands, so Nadia decides to begin. She says they were informed that Sarah had ownership of the book UnOrdinary and asks if that's true. Sarah says that's true and that she's had the book for about 12 days now. Nadia asks where she got this book from hearing, which Sarah worryingly grabs her skirt since she can't let John get involved, and remarks that if this woman was sent here by the authorities as an interrogator, then her ability could be anything from mind reading to simple lie detection, and judging from Nadia's expression, it doesn't seem like she can tell what Sarah is thinking. Sarah recounts how she was being followed by an invisible entity, so she fought it off and ran. By the time she had gotten back to her dorm, the book was already in one of her shopping bags. Nadia remarks that Sarah is not lying. After asking a few more questions, Nadia is convinced that Sarah isn't lying and admits that's a relief. She asks her to step out for a moment since there are still a few things she needs to talk about with the headmaster. In class, John receives a message from Sarah and hurries to meet her. She reveals that Elaine ratted her out, so they decided to send her home for a month, but the good news is that they won't suspect him. John says she should have just exposed him since it's his fault, but she says all of that doesn't matter now and gets into her car. As it drives away, John waves her off and heads back into the school where he's going to get wrecked now that his bodyguard isn't with him.